Os, welcome to the Gentleman's Dojo podcast. My name is Josh Munoz, and I am hyped and excited to share with you this episode because we got the one and only Abran, who is a person who went through the Gentleman's Dojo course, and he's a fellow dojo bro, and is a person who is actually married to my cousin, which
Yes,
makes
sir.
which makes this episode even more special. But Abran, welcome to the Gentleman's Dojo podcast, and I appreciate you sharing your time with us.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me on. I'm pumped to share this space with you and just talk through stories.
Yeah, and that's what I want to make this clear for the audience. For the Gentleman's Dojo is a space and place where us men can just have real, raw conversations. None of this is scripted. You know, it's a little bit scary when I just tell people, "Hey, we're just going with the flow and having a conversation." But I think that's the whole point of doing this, is to really make it acceptable for us fellas to have these type of conversations. So I'm excited to really go dive deep into your story, Avalon. I think you have an amazing story. You're an amazing person. So I would love, to start with. I would love to start with going over kind of your story when it comes to relationships.
To relationships.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would love to go through your story because you're married now to my cousin, so
Yeah.
you family now. But
Yep.
I would love to go through what was your experience going through. Uh, uh, I know you had a previous marriage. What's your
Yep.
experience going through a previous marriage? And then how does that compare to this marriage, and what makes things different? Because I think a lot of guys, we go through situations where a lot of guys don't end up divorcing and they try to stay and fight, or they do end up divorcing, they think life is over, or they think, oh, I'm divorcing, I'm just going to work on me and everything gets better. Right. But I
Yeah.
love for you to dive in on that process, kind of what you went through.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I was in a previous marriage. She's also the mother of my two girls. I have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old. But we had been together for about 10 years, married for 4. And, you know, for me, from my part in that relationship, is I wasn't very present.
Mm,
I was really closed off, walls up. I had a lot of insecurities, a lot of things in myself going on, a lot of facade, imposter syndrome. I have to be a certain way. And that, I mean, that spilled out into the relationship. It was felt, even though it wasn't anything directly said. And that played into my behavior. And part of
yeah.
that was passive aggression, not taking accountability, playing victim a lot of
Mm,
the times,
yeah.
and really not being open. I was very judgmental, closed minded, and would take any kind of real conversation or, feedback or, constructive criticism as a personal attack.
Mm, wow. Yeah.
So I'm all of that finally came to a head at a certain point, and the whole process of separation and divorce started, and that was the catalyst for me of, oh shit, what do I do? And I had no clue. I had no clue what to do. I knew that I had to do something with myself. So we did try doing marriage counseling for a while.
Mm,
um, the talk therapy wasn't really the best avenue for me. It wasn't as effective as I thought it would be. But we tried that together, and then I kept going by myself for a while. And I got to a point to where I was just spinning my tires
yeah.
with
Yeah.
this lady, and I had to pull back and just say, you know what, I can't keep doing this with this lady who's supposed to be helping me. I don't think I'm progressing anywhere. And the day it really hit me of that I need to take action and really look deep into myself was the week before my birthday, when my daughters and their mom left back to New Mexico for a couple weeks because,
Wow.
we needed space. That was the true
Wow.
moment of
Wow.
separation. And that was honestly the first time I had been with myself in a home by myself. And I don't know, I can't remember the last time I was by myself like that.
Wow. So you guys you have the two kids, right? Your two
Hmm.
daughters, and then you guys are figuring out like maybe this is not working. And then
Yep.
this at that point you guys said, well, let's go ahead and create space. But that space actually ended up being helpful because you were alone, which I think is one of the biggest thing that guys are good at is avoiding being alone, or where we are alone, we not in the space of thinking about how to progress, because you're being alone when your family leaves you is a totally different feeling than being alone without a family, right? So like
Yeah. Yeah.
talk about like that alone time. What did that do to you?
So it forced me to sit with my thoughts, with myself, and really start to get to know myself.
Mm,
Um, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit.
yeah.
Finally, we start living in two separate households. This is the first time I've ever lived on my own, had my own space.
Wow. Wait,
And
so do you were you living by with so you kind of just when you started the relationship, you kind of jumped into living with her right away? Or
yeah, so all through college, I had roommates. But
gotcha.
I
Okay.
was living at home with my parents, right? And then I moved out after I graduated high school, moved in with roommates, moved in with roommates from house to house, got into this relationship. We moved in together. So I never
Gotcha.
had a space that I could call my own
Wow.
and be
Wow.
be with myself like that.
Yeah.
And even, going out and about, I always was with somebody. Or if nobody was at the house, like I'd invite somebody over. So I never created that space for me to just be alone.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. That's crazy. So
Yeah.
now you guys are at this point, two different houses, you're living alone. Now, what's your thought process at this point?
So at this point, I'm still doing things that are keeping me distracted.
Yep.
And I didn't realize I was doing this until I found another woman to work with.
Mhm.
But I worked with her on more of a energetic, emotional level, not the talk therapy.
Right.
So
Right.
she really helped me put language and understanding to my emotions, what it feels like physically in the body, and then energetically too, though, what does that mean for you?
Mhm.
To really get curious about it. And we were having a session one day, and she pointed out that I keep myself busy even when I'm alone. So that's constantly walking around the house picking things up, or I'm just going to drop down real quick and do 10 push-ups, or I'm going to go put the
Yeah.
pull-up bar real quick,
Yeah.
keeping myself busy,
Yeah.
distracted.
Yeah. Wait, I want to make this clear to all the fellas out there listening. Going to the gym post breakup is not therapy, but continue, because that is true. We think that we think us guys truly think that, and that's all we have to go to, right? So damn, that's crazy. Yeah, so you're doing all these
And
things to distract
yeah,
yourself.
yeah, and I went through that too. I started doing a lot of calisthenics, and that played two parts for me. Of one, I didn't realize I was using it as a distraction until
Mm,
Christy had pointed out for me. And two, I was using it as a way of experimenting with myself. And do I
mm,
have do I have the discipline to do things that I haven't done before, that I've been putting off, that maybe I don't want to do that day? So it was kind of twofold for me. But when she pointed out that I'm just constantly keeping myself distracted and I just need to sit still, that
mm.
I mean, it blew my mind. I had no clue. I
Right.
just was completely unaware
Yeah.
of that unconscious behavior. And
Yeah.
so I worked with her. She gave me some tools for my Batman utility belt to work through my anger, and what that energy feels like, and how to move that energy through my body, and to really calm my nervous system down, because I took all of those emotions as I am in danger,
Yeah.
and I need to save myself. So I had to really get intentional and talk myself down and calm myself and pay attention to my heart rate. And it was a long process of learning you know, my emotions, starting to learn about triggers and trauma from childhood being brought up that I had no idea that I was still holding on to,
Hmm.
um, so I'd say the big important part for me in having my own space was being able to listen to the stories that I tell myself
Mm. Yeah.
and really hear that and what is it that I'm telling myself. And one one tool she gave me was when you're listening to those stories, you know, your mind makes your body think that you're really in that scenario.
Mhm. Bars.
Your my heightened nervous system and all that. So
Yeah.
she told me to question it, ask yourself this simple question. And I thought it was the silliest thing, but it worked for me was, can this be proven in a court of law? Is that story
I like that.
real, or are you making it, like, are you adding
Yeah.
on to something from the past?
Yeah.
And more often than not, it was me tacking things on that, you know, really didn't happen. But that's just I don't know, the place of being stressed and in danger and all of that was more familiar than being calm and at peace.
Right.
So I think naturally it was, let me stay in this place that I'm familiar with, even though it doesn't feel good.
Bingo. Yeah. No, that's huge. And I think that's the biggest part is when we are able to realize that the chaos in our life comes from comfort and addiction. And in order to break that, there has to be uncomfort. So the opposite of chaos
Yeah.
is stillness, right? And I love how you said you had to be still with yourself, and she taught you how to work through the energy, because being still is our superpower, especially as men. I think the men before us, if you go back more times, I think they just naturally weren't as distracted compared to how we're distracted. But I think I'm glad you brought that up on the stillness and working through the motions. That is huge. And that's a huge step. So going through this process, it must have been uncomfortable. Or tell me a little bit about, like, because I feel like a lot of people and a lot of guys feel like, well, um, like, were you the first person out of your core group to go through this process, or do you know people in your life that were going through this? Because people call them the black sheep, right? The one person who kind
Yeah.
of gets. Were you the first person out of your friends group to do this, and how was that stepping into this type of energetic work compared to, like, what did your friend? Did you tell your friends and family about it? Like, where was your
Yeah.
head on that?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I, for the longest time, had this facade of, I need to put up this image of, I have my shit together.
Mm,
I have everything together, always did good in school, good in sports, to have a family now, my friends are, I'm gonna say my close brothers were never hesitant to express, like, yo, we're proud of you. You made it. Like, you're doing great. And I took that on as, I need to maintain that image now. they
uh,
didn't put they didn't put that on me. I put that on myself.
Self-imposed. Yep.
And so when I was going through the divorce and the separation, there were days where I was just a puddle on the floor. I felt defeated. I didn't know what to do. And I finally, I opened up to my parents. I called them the day that my wife and girls had went back to New Mexico, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I just started crying. I was like, "Hey, this is
Wow.
what's going on," and I was so worried. And I got nothing but embrace and love. And,
Mm,
oh, I hope you're okay. Do you still want us to come out for your birthday? And, nothing but open arms. And in my head, I had a whole different outcome built up of, it's
yeah.
not going to be that.
Yep.
So I opened up to my parents, and then I opened up to my brothers, who, I mean, we've been friends longer than we haven't, going on 20, 21, 22 years now.
Yep.
And I had nothing but love and support. But then it opened doors for all of us to now start being a little more vulnerable,
Mm,
that it's okay to do that. But they were all already on their own little journey. I just had no clue, because I never dug deep with them like that.
yeah. Yeah.
So I reached out to my boy Clifford, and he helps me a lot. He helped me
Yeah.
a lot. He was already on his kick of journaling every day, and he had his own little meditative practices and mantras, and things that helped him because of the struggles he had, that he had realized and that he needed to work through, that he was able to share with me, that opened my mind up. Like, I had no clue you were going through that. Like, oh, all
Wow.
right, like you've worked through it. I can too. Okay.
Yeah.
And just empowering is what it was. And then I got different messages from every single one of my brothers, but they all showed nothing but love and support
Mhm.
and open arms, just like my parents. Whatever you need, we're here. Like, you don't have to hide anything. You're mommy will love you just the way you are.
Bro, that
And
shit right there gives me chills because I think what you did there is real is exactly what you did right there is exactly why I started this podcast. And as you know, the Gentleman's Dojo, uh,
yeah,
because I think all of us fellas are going through shit, but we don't take the time to actually address it. It's not part of our geez, man, like us guys have like
yeah,
ladies have tea they talk about and whatever they talk about, but us guys, we talk about stuff that doesn't even matter. We don't usually
yeah,
go deeper than the surface level. And I think what you did there allowed not only because what you did there is you transmuted your darkness to light. So when you transmute your darkness to light, it now shines on others and now opens up conversations, open up possibilities where you and your boys could get closer, and be able to have a conversation. And like you said, majority of your brothers were already on the path too. So it's like, bro, that's dope that you were able to go ahead and freaking share that story and be vulnerable with them because that's how it opens up the doors for them too.
yeah, yeah. And it did. And a big moment for me was my brother Carlos. He I mean, he was the best man in my wedding. I was the best man in his. Like, he's my dog. He's my number one. And there was a day he was just like, come over, like let's go fishing, like just come over. I'll take you out. You don't got to worry about nothing. Like, I got you. And me and him went fishing, and then he literally drove me around North Texas for 3 hours while I just cried and bawled to him and just spilled everything out. And it was like, that was the hugest like weight off my shoulders. Like, oh, all right, it's gonna be okay.
Bro,
But
that is
for him to do
fire.
that was just like, my heart exploded.
Bro, chills. Fire. Yo, if you guys are listening to this podcast episode, that right there is fire, bro. I think having, I think there's two parts to it. A, having the ability to express those emotions is strength. Like you're able to do that, but also having a friend who's also able to hold space. And
Yeah,
that's the analogy I used to put in the dojo, right? It's like you want a sparring partner, right? You got to learn how to punch the mitts, but you also got to learn how to hold the mitts. And I think our ability as men to be able to hold space for our fellow brothers is important, and I mean, granted, honestly, that's great practice for our women. Our women are even they're on an extreme level of emotions, and they are, Mother Nature, right? Mother Nature
yeah,
can destroy anything. So it's like, I think if us guys can open up to each other like that and hold space for each other like that, I mean, the impact is going to just ripple through the whole freaking galaxy.
yeah, yeah, huge. And I mean, my boy Gordo Buzz, same thing. It was all empowerment from them. It was interesting. I think they weren't realizing they were doing it. They were trying to take me back to like middle school Abran. Like, remember who you are. Like, that goofy ass kid. Like, you're good. Like, it's gonna be all right. So, again, nothing but love from those people, and they're monumental in my growth. And I still share with them today. What's going on. We're definitely in communication more frequent now than what it was before.
That's awesome, bro. I love that. I love that. I appreciate you diving deep into kind of where you were and kind of the process that you went through, what you had to do to step in, So it's like, uh, you could have easily, it would have been easier for you to stay distracted and use things to distract you, but you chose the route of growth, which I believe is more challenging, but a million times more rewarding, you know? So
Yeah.
I would love to go over, as like we're gonna do a bounce back, right? So we discovered where you were in your first marriage and all the growth you have. And we talk a lot about in the podcast, kind of like the four pillars we had, the four segments we had in the dojo. So that covers a lot of the relationship, which we're going to come back to that. We're not going to skip on that, but I would love to cover more of the inner child, right? The pillar two is awakening the inner boy. I would love for you to share your story of like how was your upbringing, what things you went through that kind of
Hmm.
caused that first marriage for you to show up that way, right? Because as we know, how we
Yeah.
show up as adults is usually stems from how we our environment, how we were raised, the people around, the energy we're around from the ages 0 to 10 or 0 to 7, right? So
Yeah.
um, give us a little snapshot of like what you went through, or even 0 to teenage years, right? I think until we're adults, it shapes us. And then when we're adults, now projects in our reality. So share with us your experience growing up and what was your environment like, and kind of what you feel like caused for you to not be present in your relationship. Because I think that's a lot of things that guys right now, if they go, well, damn, I don't feel present in my relationship, or I already know what that being present in my relationship means. Let's go through
Yeah.
your upbringing so people go, well, damn, wait a minute. I did have that similar upbringing and that feeling. Maybe I'm not being as present as I thought I was when it comes to my marriage. So I would love to kind of hear your story and the little Abran uh, come up.
Yeah. Yeah. So growing up, playing sports my whole life, baseball, soccer. Actually, my parents put me in everything. They let me try everything. So I did, Boy Scouts. I did karate for a while. I did soccer. Yeah.
Sorry. Shout out to
Ba-
karate.
yeah. Baseball was my thing. Soccer was my thing. I did basketball. I did football, track. They let me try everything. And they were very adamant about, doing good in school. And very family oriented. Every Sunday we'd go up to my grandpa's farm and all the cousins, aunties, uncles go. We always have dinner there. But my parents, you know, they were functioning alcoholics, and they were present in the household to a certain point in my life where we would, have dinners together. Um, they would run us to and from practice, traveling a lot. Then we got to a point to where I want to say my sister was maybe around 12, 11, 12, and I was 9, 8 or 9. But around that time frame where they started to go out to the bar after work. And so my sister's, I guess, at the age just old enough to where um, we can stay home, right? So, and this was something that I didn't realize I was suppressing for so long either, was, my sister was taking care of me and raising me. And
Wow.
I always looked at that as like, oh, free house, no parents, we can do what we want. Like, what are you so upset about, Santana? Like, look
Right,
at
right,
this,
right.
you
This is the
know?
yep.
Yeah.
But
And then,
you put yourself in her shoes, and you realize, wow, she had to become a mom at 12 years old.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, and her and my relationship, we can go into that later, but
Mm.
we did not get along until she was in high school and I was in middle school. Like, her and I butted
Wow.
heads. We fought all the time. And there was a very defining moment where like it clicked and was like, all right, we'll get along now. It was blackmail for me to her is what it was. I'm gonna tell
Wow.
mom and dad you're doing this if you're not nice to me.
Ah.
And from that
Wow.
moment, she was like, all right, I'll be nice to you. And then we just started bonding over little things, you know.
Wow.
But the relationship between my mom and my dad. So my dad, um, very hard worker, work ethic is impeccable. You know, um, you do your best in everything. You don't pass up opportunities. Um, a very hands-on person. He likes to do things. He works with his hands a lot. He's very detail oriented too. He's a machinist making parts. He was a government contract, so he was making very important parts, and very hard worker. He came from the ground up. He's from Mexico, came to the States when he was 5, graduated high school. My grandpa, his dad, put him on a bus, sent him to Cali to go work on his uncle's farms. And my dad got off, I think, in Fresno or somewhere before getting to the farm, saying, "I'm not going to do that." Lived on
Wow.
this, lived on the streets for a while, and then got his way into a machine shop out there, being like a janitor, sweeping up the floor. And he slowly started picking up knowledge. He did all of this right, self-made, um, takes initiative, and so that's the kind of person he is. He's
Yeah.
also, I want to say, like, very rigid in his ways. This is the way we do it, and no, I'm not even going to entertain that. This is how it is. This is the way we do things. And then my mom is like, she's comadre. She's a social butterfly.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's also very family oriented. Um, just I my one of my memories that I used to get so mad when I was little is every Saturday morning I'd wake up to hear her laughing on the phone because she's talking. She wakes up and she calls all her siblings every
Yeah.
Saturday.
It's such a Latina thing to do.
Dude, chopping it up, and then that would wake me up, and it's like, oh, and she gets off the phone, you think you have a break, and nope, she's out of bed, time to clean, let's go. Yeah, so she was very nurturing, very kind. Um, she I so me being the baby of the family, the youngest, and also a boy in a Hispanic Mexican household, she took, I want to say, extra special care of me. I was her
Yeah.
baby boy. She was
Mhm.
also the baby of her family. So that was something she'd always let me know of, like, you're the baby, you're my baby, I'm a baby, and kind of coddled me a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, but she was always there for me when I needed it, getting in trouble, she was there. Um, but that, yeah, I mean, that was my upbringing. They were very supportive when it came to sports and to school. Now they did treat my sister and I differently because we're two completely different people. So
Mhm.
I'm a very atypical person. My room is clean, it's organized. I can't have cluttered spaces because I can't think in cluttered spaces. My sister, on the other hand, she organized chaos is the best way to describe her. My mom and dad would always get on her because her room was dirty. She'd have clothes all over the floor, whatever. But if you asked her to grab something, she knew exactly where it was in that chaos. And she would so
Yeah.
the the grace for her versus for me was much different. And I went the scientifical route with school, and I loved math and all these things, and she loves art and she's amazing at it. So we're just completely opposite ends of the stick, right?
Mhm.
And I think the way my parents treated us played into mine and my sister's relationship.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's something we got to realize that growing up as kids, we don't have the right tools, so we don't can't understand why our parents are treating us differently
Yeah,
because we naturally see it the same, but realize that we're all so different. So like different personality types and different types of people maybe are it's just all different on how you're treated, and then how you're treated can affect your guys' relationship. Which makes sense. A lot of parents pin up kids to each other,
yeah,
or they'll hold each other to like a competition without even knowing. And I don't even think our parents were even conscious of that, but I'm glad you brought that up.
yeah, yeah. And so I think my sister and I have talked about this like quite a bit, and I think there was some resentment there because there just wasn't as much grace for
Mm,
her, and she, in the dojo, she wrote that beautiful letter that I
yeah.
have it at my office because it's so beautiful. But my favorite part of that is she calls me my best frenemy because we were just
Best,
clashing all the
yeah.
time.
So
Yeah,
so okay, we see that dynamic. You have two parents that are functioning alcoholics, right? You have a dynamic with your sister that there was resentment that maybe you didn't even cause, right? Maybe that was just the way that
Yeah.
your parents were treating them. And hey, it's easier to treat a kid with, you know, give him a little more grace because he's naturally more organized, because that's your personality type compared to someone who doesn't. But let's talk about, how did that show up? The environment of, living with parents with alcoholism, the resentment with your sister, how did that show up now later in your adult life, and then maybe in your marriage, and maybe not being present? How did that kind of tie into each other?
So I think the big tie point is control. I
Mm.
had to have control.
Oh shoot.
I
Good.
had to create an environment where, but just that, like I had control. I had
Mm.
to know what was going on, and I did take on like my dad's traits, and I didn't realize it. Of this is the way we do it, and this is how it's going to be done.
Shoot. Yeah.
And I didn't even realize I was doing that. And the way I was doing that though wasn't like, it was closed-mindedness and
Mm.
being judgmental.
Mm.
So ways of living, doing things differently were presented or expressed, and I immediately just shut it out because no,
Wow.
because that's not the way I think of doing it. So no, like why
Mm.
would we do it that way? And I think that's a huge part of it, because when I was little, things would come up where it's like trying to problem solve, right? Trying to get from point A to point B. I know what point B is, and what I know, right, that I need to get there. I don't know how to get there. My parents, adults, they have more life experience. They know very efficient ways to get from point A to point B. And I would start to try and do something, and I would more often than not get cut off of like, no, like, why are you doing it like that? Like, here, just do it like this. Like, this is how you do it. And I didn't realize it, but I was frustrated. I don't know
Mm.
how to express that as a kid, but I would
Right.
get frustrated. I wouldn't like tantrum or lash out or anything, but I would get defeated and be like, well, I was gonna get there. Like, maybe my way wasn't the right way, but like I would have got there. I know exactly where I needed to get.
Mm.
And now as an adult, looking back on that is like, man, that's a huge part of, I think, growth as a kid, of learning about yourself and building trust in yourself, of allowing yourself to make the mistake, get it wrong until you figure out, what works and doesn't work for you. So it's like the problem solving was taken away from me, and that's something I really enjoy, is
And
is is the problem solving. So
and like you said, like we're kids, we don't have the right tools. But I'm glad you said it like the way you did right there, because it is important for us to realize that I wanted to tie it together, because a lot of people go, well, a lot of guys might not even know that not present. They might not even know that they're trying to get a sense of control. But what you did was perfect. You got a chance to reflect on your experiences as a child. And I think that's the biggest part of the pillar of awakening the inner boy, is let's go back with love and non-judgment to just go through what our experiences were. Because what we tend to do, especially guys, and kids do this too, and ladies do this too, but we tend to suppress what we've been through because we think that's normal. Or we go, it wasn't that big of a deal, so like let me suppress what I went through. But it's like, no, what you experienced and what you went through as a child was very valid. That was a valid experience that you went, crap, I'm over here trying to problem solve. I love problem solving. And then you have your authority hero figure in your lives, our parents, come in and say, no, no, just do it this way. And then you go, okay. And then you're like, whatever. And then you tend to accept it. And then 20 fucking years later, here we are. You're in a marriage, you know what I'm saying? You're trying to control everything
yeah,
because that little boy of you never got a chance to be heard or seen or given the opportunity to be themselves.
yeah, and then also being very hard on myself, right? Like, I can't trust myself. I can't, because I'm gonna XYZ. And
Wow.
that absolutely came up from part of my child. Part of how I was just brought up, those moments where when it's happening you don't realize that it's monumental, and it just sticks with you. And
Yeah.
the control, the not trusting in myself, being very judgmental, closed-minded, that carried all through my adult life, poured into my relationship, which was there's a lot more to peel back on the onion of that relationship, but those were very big points that led to, the separation, the divorce.
Yeah.
And those were things I had to then realize that I'm I'm doing this, I'm the one doing this,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm imposing it on myself again. But there's some I talked about this in the dojo, but the other big point when I was a kid of the lack of self-trust was I'm in my room, I'm building myself up to go talk to my dad because baseball is his thing.
Mhm.
He coached my brother, he's coaching me, and I love baseball, but I'm in love with soccer, and that's what I want to pursue. I'm like 8 years old, building myself up in my room, like I'm gonna tell him tonight's the night. I'm gonna tell him that I'm gonna quit baseball. And I go into the living room and I'm like, hey, dad, I don't want to play baseball anymore. I just want to focus on soccer. Like, I really thought this through.
Wow.
I just want to focus on soccer and, I just want to put my time into that. And he laid into me, you're not quitting baseball. If you quit baseball, you're going to quit everything in your life. And laid into me. Right. And I just was like, okay, went back to my room just so defeated. Like, I guess I don't know like what's best for me. Like I don't know what I should be doing.
Wow.
And I didn't realize that I was holding on to that for my whole life.
Wow.
Like that came uncovered once with talk therapy. And when that came uncovered in talk therapy, I was like, why is this barely coming up? Like me and you have been seeing each other for over 6 months now. And then it came up again with Christine. And then I finally, when I was on my own, living on my own, had time to really sit through that story and see like what is that doing to me? What does that mean?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
That's powerful. That's some powerful stuff. And that's a powerful tool right there. Like I always said, this podcast moving forward, because I always say, like, he said Batman toolbox. I
yeah,
believe
yeah,
the dojo toolbox and things like that, the power of reflection, right? Taking the time to sit with yourself, because what happens if now, like a non-emotional observer of your life, we take a look of that experience, what you did is you trusted your gut based off of a decision you want to make, based off of inner feeling. So you went to go try trust your gut, your discernment, which is our superpower, and it got shut down. Now imagine that moving forward to the type of decisions we make, and then how it confuses us. And I think that's
yeah,
the biggest thing is us men don't get a chance to feel, so we can't use our biggest superpower, which is our feelings, our
yeah,
discernment.
yeah. And going through the dojo, a tool that was super helpful that an activity you had us do was write a letter. And it was you gave us options, right? From what
Yeah.
perspective to write it, from adult to your adult self, to your child self. And I took the perspective of I'm going to write a letter coming from little Abran to adult Abran.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that was huge for me. That experience of writing it and then reading it out to the group, huge.
Love it, guys. Look, he just dropped a tool on you right there, Albert. I appreciate you dropping that. But yeah, take the time to write letters, from your little self to your adult self. And the assignment was opposite, right? To a letter to your
Yeah,
younger self, but you switched it up and it came out beautiful. And I remember you sharing that, and it's just cool to see that perspective, because that inner boy always lives with us. So I appreciate you breaking down like that process of inner child work. I think inner child work is one of the most underrated processes that especially us guys, do. So I think if you could do anything, start reflecting those times, because we suppress those emotions and feelings, and it shows up in our life somehow, some way. Now let's switch gears. Let's go back to, so that was the awaken the inner boy, the bat pillar, and we started with the divine union. When it comes to what your experience was with going through a divorce and how you got a chance to reflect on that. But I really want to switch back gears to now maybe your current marriage and how
Yeah.
you're able to find, the love of your life. And I want to make this clear that when you started the Gentleman's Dojo, it was, I feel like, probably one of the hardest part probably one of the hardest moments in your life to step into something of self-help and something that you can reflect yourself, and you chose to do it, which I praise you. And I always tell you, bro, like, you showing up based off of what you're going through and you still showing up to the Gentleman's Dojo and doing the inner work is it gave me hope for us men that even in our darkest times or our hardest times, that's still a time for us to be able to find that help. And I don't think the help ever stops. But
Yeah.
I would love to for you to share kind of where you were before you stepped into the Gentleman's Dojo, and how did you overcome it, stay focused with the dojo, and then like kind of like where your relationship is now.
Yeah. Yeah. So um I'm now, putting myself out into the world in a completely different energetic space. I'm pulled, I'm no longer the puddle on the floor. I'm empowered and I feel bright, vibrant. And at this point, I'm not looking for love, relationships, nothing like that. But things just happen and fall into your lap. Like me and Lisa, we always talk about all the things that had to fall into place for us to meet that night
Wow.
at Legacy Hall, November 6th. And I don't know. We're at a Queen concert. A Queen cover band is playing. I'm kind of being the creep guy because I'm out by myself. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of standing in the back, at the bar, kind of just watching, listening to the music. And I see a beautiful woman with a cute butt, and I'm like, all right. I go on this back and forth with this inner dialogue of like,
Yeah.
do it. You need to go talk to her. Like, nah. So I go up, start a conversation with her, and then we exchange numbers at the end of the night, and we keep in touch after that. We go on our first date, about a month later, or a few weeks later, go on a second date, and everything aligns. Everything feels right, open, honest from day one, vulnerable. There's nothing but curiosity and acceptance for each other.
Mhm.
And it's something I had never experienced before.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
I think I didn't experience that partly because I didn't allow myself to.
Yeah. How you
I
showed up, right?
right, I'd hold myself in. So I just spilled everything out. And she's done the same. And so fast forward, we're dating, we're boyfriend and girlfriend. We're um basically living with each other every other week, because my schedule with my girls, and we're progressing the relationship forward. My work life is starting to take a new step.
Mhm.
There's a role at work that I've been looking forward to since I started at this company, and it just so happens like the position opens up and I put my name in the hat, and they're like, yeah, you got it, it's all you. And I'm super pumped. It involves project management, engineering, problem solving, everything that I love to do. And it also involves international travel. So it's like, yeah, I get
Mm.
to do that too.
Which is always a goal of yours, right?
Yeah, that was part of a goal of mine, was to
Mm.
travel, to see the world, and now I get to do it, um, regularly. And that's toward the end of last year when all of that's happening. And I step into so there's so many things that happened all at once. So there was disconnection at that point in time at the end of the year between me and Lisa.
Mm.
We were drifting off, you know, to two different timelines.
Mhm.
And she could feel it, I could feel it, and she was courageous enough to say, we can't do this. We need to separate. Like, this is no longer aligned for me.
Mhm.
And that was really hard for me because I'm just so infatuated with this woman, and everything was right. And I take on the role for work, and I take my first international trip. I'm managing this project, and I do it for a couple of weeks, and I realize that the fantasy of this role is not the reality of it.
Mm.
So yes, I get to do all these things that I enjoy, um, but it's taking more away from the other things that I really enjoy, which is my family time,
Right.
which is my time with Lisa, which is watching my girls grow. And part of that was because of the traveling. The other part was because it's an international role. So I'm on the phone for work from, 5 o'clock at night to 10 o'clock at night, because that's the time difference between the two countries. So I'm not spending any time with my girls. They get home from school, I get them fed, we hang out for about an hour, and then, oh, dad's got to work. Entertain yourselves. I'll help you out as much as I can. So it really just, I had to step back and really think about, is this right? Because my family is important, my health is important. Um, and it was digging into that, my my time, my energy, that is also very important to me. And I just lost balance of all of that going into this role because I was living it out in the fantasy. And those two things happened um, really close to each other. And then the back end of December, the day after Christmas, my mom moved on to her next life. She and it happened really quickly. She went into the hospital um, the 23rd, uh, got moved into ICU on Christmas Eve. And the second I found that out, I was at the gym. I stopped what I was doing. I came home, and the universe worked for me beautifully. I was able to book a flight that was departing 2 hours from the time I booked it. And it got
Wow.
me home. It was wild the way everything worked out. Um, but I got to spend that time with my mom, and I also got to heal with her in that moment. Um, a a a big part was I had to let her know that I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. I love you. You did great. You raised me beautifully. And that was like, I don't know. That was really hard. It was very relieving. It was hard for me to say it and be strong at the same time, because I'm trying to show her like, oh, I'm not worried about you. I don't want you to worry about my worry, because that's what moms do.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So I did I cried, I let her know, and I just kept telling her over and over and over. And she embraced, and she thanked me, and she just let me know that she was happy that I was there, and that I was providing comfort for her as much as like she provided comfort for me my whole life.
Wow.
So all like those three events all took place within the span of 3 weeks. The relationship with Lisa, losing that, realizing that this job is not aligning with me and how I want to, be in the world. And then my mom moving on, all of that just whirlwind. And come January, I spent a good month and a half back home at that
Wow.
time. So I was at home from December all the way to the end of January. And in that time frame, I called my boss, and I had to let him know that I'm pulling out from this position that I just accepted. I can't, I can do it, but what I have to sacrifice for it, I'm not willing to sacrifice.
Mm.
And that was hard for me too, because I have longest time, I'm still working through it, is the perception and fear of conflict. And I got to
Mm.
say conflict because more often than not, it's not conflict. It's just me building that up in my head.
Yeah.
And so I had to have that conversation, and it went well. I actually got to continue to do my design project management, but locally here in Texas, so all of that worked out. I joined the dojo in January. We have our first session, and um, I was almost gonna skate out on it. Like I have too much going on,
Mm.
but I'm beyond happy that I did not, because that brotherhood and everything we worked on and discussed in those sessions just gave so much more perspective, and yeah, I think just gave so much more perspective, and that safe space to really just let it all out. Whatever it is that needs to come out, it can come out here.
Yeah. And
And
that's
it
why
did. And
And that's why I praise you on that, because I think you were in a position where you could have, it would have been the easiest, you would have been the easiest person in the dojo to be like, you know what, I could let this go because what I'm currently experiencing, but you still chose to show up. And that's one of the characteristics of being a dojo bro, is humility and a willingness to be open and to learn, you know?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, meeting the other dojo bros, I didn't realize a parallel life that I had with one of the dojo bros.
Yeah. Shout out to Chris
And
Kane, who was in the first
yeah,
podcast. Yeah.
yeah, Chris, yeah. And it was just mind blowing.
Mhm.
So just new brotherhood, new bonds made, and it was great. It was great. So January, started that, came back to Texas, continued to do the work. There was one day I went out to the lake and just to go walk. I walked for like 2 hours, and I was really paying attention to um, what was going on in my head. So my ego and my shadow, and I was listening to all of it. And then it clicked, like, I need to write this down. So I pulled my phone out and I just started listing everything out. And it all, because I did that, and then I'm doing the dojo with you guys, I was able to be consistent with it and to tie things back to childhood, and to realize, like, wow, this is what's created that story that is not true. And it was great. It was great. And then yeah, Lisa and I, we reunited.
Yeah.
We reunited. I mean, when we had first met, there was a freeze out here in Texas, and her and I were still kind of fresh, and we got basically frozen in together. We had to stay together because the ice.
Yeah.
And then there was one again this past year, and I had come over to have some tea and just catch up, and we got frozen in again together, and so we started to build our relationship again from there, kind of from ground zero. Aired everything out that we felt really misaligned on before, and talked about how we wanted to move forward, what the relationship would look like if we decided to move forward. And it was beautiful. It was
Bro.
beautiful. And before, I'll say this, before we separated, I had already let her know. We had went out to the mountains, and I had already let her know. I was like, you know what? One day I'm gonna make you my wife. Like, I'm gonna marry you. I'm telling you right now, like, this is gonna happen. And then, you know, I was actively looking, then we separated, and everything happened, and then came back to Texas, and I was like, well, you know, I believe in this. I'm gonna keep looking. I'm gonna keep looking for this ring, and it just, everything fell into place. Everything fell into place.
Love that, bro. I love that. I love your accountability, because if you what I want to highlight is that you noticed things were out of alignment based off of yourself, and the fantasy that you thought this job would bring, and then you realize, there's a disconnection from your lady and your ladies, your girls, your daughters,
Yeah.
So what you did is, you, as a aware being, you said, you know what, this is not aligned with me. I can't keep sacrificing this. Shifted that and changed the decision, because you have to. A lot of people would say, well, I understand what my current situation is, but you got to do something about it. You chose to do something about it. You're able to still do what you like with the job, but do it from remote in Dallas. And then on top of that, you're able to marry the love of your life. You're able to bring
Yeah.
that back, So I think that's beautiful, seeing, your journey. And this is all recent, right? These are things that are
Yeah.
recent. And I think it's beautiful to be a part of it. And, although, Lisa is my cousin, it was just great to see it, great to see that you guys both came together. And, she's working, not saying like she wasn't working through things either, but at the same time, that's what us men got to do. We got to take responsibility for ourselves. Relationships just mirror back ourselves. So that's how we learn, right? So you had to go through that to be like, all right. And shout out to the strong women who are able to make a decision, which was probably hard for her, to
Yeah.
say, you know what, I got to end this because it's not in alignment with me. And, that now you guys at a 0 point to be like, all right, now we got to make decisions. And then now you guys chose to come back together and be in love.
Yeah. Lover boy Abe.
Who got you cheesing like that? Who got you cheesing like that? Boy, this man is in love.
Yo.
That's amazing, bro. We're gonna wrap up with that because that's fire. I appreciate you sharing not only what you did when you got divorced, how you bounced back, your experience as a child, and kind of what shaped that first divorce, and then to now finding the love of your life. It is beautiful. You're a beautiful person. I appreciate you not only be a dojo bro, but I appreciate you spending some time with us on this podcast today.
Yeah, man, it was great. Thank you.
I love
I
it,
look
bro.
forward to see who else you got on here too. Keep
Oh,
it going.
bro. You know me, bro. I ain't gonna slow down.
Yeah.
We're on a mission. My last question, to leave you off with this question: for any men who are going through any type of trouble when it comes to a marriage or relationship trouble, what would you advise men to do? What would be your advice for men who are, if they listen to this and go, fuck, like I'm in a position right now where there is a lot of friction in my relationship, or there's a lot of friction within myself in this relationship that's damaging it? What would be one advice you would give to them?
I think open up and be honest with yourself and your role in where your relationship is at. It's hard to do when you realize your part in it.
Mm,
But open up, friends, family. You don't realize the support system you have until you actually reach out to it.
love it. You guys heard it from Abran, the one and only. I appreciate you, brother. That's some beautiful advice, fellas. If you're hearing this, having trouble, open up. Be the person who steps up and does it. This is, if you're looking for a sign, this is it, right? So, Abran, again, appreciate you, brother, and that it wraps it up for us at the Gentleman's Dojo podcast. Make sure you guys subscribe, and looking forward to more episodes.
Yes, sir.
Os.